Hi, I'm Kyle and I'm 24 years old. I've been a weightlifter for over 10 years. This sport runs in my blood. I used to follow the international players and imagine myself in their place. I had a fervent dream of becoming the world weightlifting champion. I've been working towards this goal ever since I was 13 years old. I've trained 5 hours a day for years with the ultimate goal of competing in the Olympic Games. I craved the fame and recognition that would grant me. One of my first early successes was winning a junior championship while representing my city. They called me the Tank due to my impressive strength. All the people around me foresaw a bright future for me. Title after title, contest after contest, my victories inevitably led me to the national championship. The winner of that championship would represent our country in the Olympics. I underwent intensive training to the exclusion of all else. I was so focused. My manager was confident that I could easily win the world championship, and I didn't want to disappoint him. The competition was fierce. I faced numerous fierce competitors, but I defeated them all and reached the final round. The only player left to challenge me was last year's champion, who had never lost a contest. The competition gradually got harder and harder until we reached the point where one of us had to break the world record to beat the other. A crucial tipping point came when I needed to lift a weight that was heavier than I had ever attempted before. There was danger in doing so, and my manager cautioned me to consider if it was worth the risk of serious injury to continue. But I was too driven to heed his warning. I had trained and waited too long for this moment. There's no turning back now, so I bent down and grasped the barbell. I sucked in a deep breath and lifted and heaved with all my might. As soon as I had lifted the weight above my head, I knew immediately that I had overestimated myself. After only a fraction of a second, I felt an excruciating pain in my backbone. A snap. I collapsed under the weight of the barbell and fell flat to the floor with the barbell across my chest, pinning me down. The pain in my back was unbearable. I felt as if I were dying. I was taken to the hospital where a doctor diagnosed that I had broken my back at the fourth and fifth vertebrae and that I would never walk again. I tried to kill myself on several occasions, not wanting to live my remaining life in a wheelchair. All my friends, and even my coach, gradually began avoiding me, not wanting to be associated with a loser and a cripple. My mom was the only person who stood by my side and never gave up on me. She helped me with my rehabilitation. Initially, the simple act of lifting a teaspoon felt like I was trying to lift a mountain. After 6 months of intensive physical therapy, a miracle happened. I was able to stand erect for a few seconds. 3 months later, I was able to walk slowly. I began a light training program to get back to my dream. Everybody was shocked that I was determined and foolhardy enough to try to do it all again, but I intended to achieve my dream even if it killed me, which it might very likely do. 2 years later, the scene cuts to Kyle walking out onto the Olympics weightlifting stage to the cheering of thousands of people.
I've been cursed, and it will haunt me for the rest of my life. It all began with a joke at first, but some jokes have serious consequences, and when this happens, your life becomes an uphill struggle. My name is Catherine. I'm 16 years old, and I live with my parents and my little sister Mara. I like music, acting, and watching action movies. I play baseball and practice ballet. I've even won a lot of prizes. I just had one problem. I like to make fun of people. It's like an addiction. I never watched what I said, nor did I care who it hurt. The kids I picked on were actually kind and gentle, but that just encouraged me even more. My friends were exactly like me. In fact, I was their leader. We walked like we owned the school. We had a classmate named Norman. He wasn't exactly what you'd call in good shape. He was quite the opposite of fit. During class breaks, my gang and I would steal his lunchbox and throw it around each other, keeping it away from him. We watched him run trying to catch us, but he'd stop halfway. The extra weight didn't help him, and he'd quickly run out of breath. Whenever he entered the classroom, we would surprise him by throwing old, musty vegetables and fruits at him. Norman tolerated our teasing. He didn't seem to mind much. But then, one day, a joke went a bit too far. We conceived an evil plan. We told him that there was going to be a photo contest, and the person who makes the funniest pose wins. Norman was so gullible that he believed us. He actually gave it some thought. Then he posed for us. We did our best not to burst out laughing while we took pictures for him. The next day, when he came to school, Norman discovered that his photo shoot pictures had been posted all over the classroom walls, and the kids were laughing, writing comments all over the place. Norman was mortified, and he looked around at his classmates' faces. They were all laughing and pointing at him. Norman started crying, and his nose started bleeding. Then he fainted. A teacher had to call an ambulance to take him to the hospital. I certainly didn't expect that to happen. We knew that Norman would get so fatigued sometimes and leave school for the rest of the day, but we didn't know that he had a medical condition, and I felt deep regret. The curse that I spoke of earlier began when a girl named Naomi joined our class as a new student. On her first day, our teacher brought her in and introduced her to us. She sat at the desk at the very last row. I noticed that she was always looking at me in a strange way, and I wondered why. She looked at me with disdain, and I couldn't figure out why. It was my first time meeting her, after all. I avoided her, mainly because her looks made me feel uneasy, and whenever my gang wanted to make fun of her, I told them to leave her alone. I felt there was something about this girl. One day, during science class, the teacher had paired us up to do a lab experiment, and I intended to ask her about the way she looked at me. But before I could say anything, she took the initiative and surprised me by broaching the subject herself. "You will pay for what you did to Norman," she said coldly. I looked at her and asked, "How do you know Norman? And what are you talking about?" She replied, "It doesn't matter how I know. I just do." I spent the next few days thinking about her words. Afterwards, Naomi ignored me completely. No more staring, no more accusing looks. It was as if I no longer existed to her. I didn't understand her. Then came the day. We had a basketball match. It was the championship game, but I was still busy thinking about Naomi's words. During the game, I glanced at Naomi and caught her looking at me, which distracted me. One of the players from the other team suddenly bumped into me, knocking me down and causing me to land badly on one of my knees. The pain I was in. I had to withdraw from the game to be taken to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctor said that I had torn a ligament from my knee and told me that I would need a surgery and a lot of medication. So after going through the surgery, I began taking my medications. It caused me to gain weight, even though I wasn't eating very much, just vegetables and fruits. I asked the doctor about my sudden weight gain, and he told me the medications I was taking were affecting my hormonal balance, which rarely happened, but in my case, it did. He said that I would either have to endure great pain or deal with the overweight because it wasn't going to stop. So there you have it, guys. This is the curse that Naomi cast upon me, the price I had to pay for what I did to Norman. Eventually, I got well enough to take my final exams. When I arrived at school, all my friends took one look at me and started laughing. I was now their target, their prey. One of them said, "You're as large as an elephant." "I'll lose weight once I stop taking my medications," I retorted, but no one was listening. I am now living in a nightmare, and I would like to tell Norman that I'm very, very sorry for everything that I've done.
My name is Nathan. I'm a 40-year-old businessman who runs an import-export company. I lived with Mom and Dad and my brother Sam. Some siblings coexist peacefully, some fight all the time, and some hate each other. Sam and I ended up in this latter category because our decisions shape our lives. Let me tell you our story. I worked hard and made good decisions to be successful in life. This contrasted with my lazy brother who wanted easy money without having to work for it. This was a sore point between us. We fought all the time, and the situation was exacerbated by Dad's unexpected death by heart attack. Sam and I took over Dad's business and became partners. Soon, though, Sam thought the business was too much work, so he decided to work abroad for bigger wages and less work, presumably. I begged him to work locally and stay close to the family, but he couldn't be persuaded. So he gave up his share in the business and left to work abroad, and I ran the business as sole proprietor. As I gained experience and business acumen, the business prospered and grew as I earned the customer's trust. As my profits grew, Mom and I moved into a bigger house. Mom wanted me to get married and have kids, and I wanted to make her wish come true. So I found a beautiful girl and married her. She was a blessing to us. When she became pregnant, Mom was ecstatic. We learned that it would be a baby boy, so we chose a name for him, John. As her pregnancy progressed from trimester to trimester, the strain on her body was obvious, but finally, the baby was born, and Mom and I were thrilled to see her only grandchild and my only child, respectively, growing up day by day. I wanted to teach him everything, and I wanted him to be brave. Our lives were content, peaceful, and fulfilled. At one point, I decided to grow the company by opening up some more stores. It was a challenging project, but was necessary to remain competitive with our rivals. Our wealth and good fortune continued to grow, and I bought a new villa for us. Mom, wife, and son. One evening shortly after that, we invited friends over to celebrate moving into our new villa. As we were celebrating, friends were wishing us the best. John was playing and running around everywhere and being a little naughty at times, and everything was going smoothly. Then suddenly, the lights went out for a couple of minutes, and then came back on. This was unusual, but not wanting to worry the guests, I told them that it was a normal glitch that happened once in a while. Still, as a precaution, I called for all the children to gather around me. All were present, except for John. We searched everywhere for him, but couldn't find him. We were all worried about what had happened to him. Then, one of my friends shouted that there was a phone call for me. When I took the phone, a voice on the other end said, "Don't worry about your little prince. He's okay, and he'll stay that way as long as you send us $100,000. Otherwise..." Then the caller hung up. My friends tried to calm me down, but I was frantic with worry. Who would want to kidnap my son? If I gave them the money, what assurance did I have that they would return my son? Then I got angry. They needed to be punished for this heinous deed. So I called a friend who was a police officer and asked him for help. He said he could put a small tracking device in the money bag so they could track my movements and hopefully catch these kidnap for ransom thugs. While it was a neat plan, it was also extremely dangerous if the kidnappers were to find out and escape from our trap. After a couple of days, the thugs called and told me where to meet them with the money. It was a location in the northern part of the country, a forest with dense trees and tall grass. A place that would be easy to escape into and hide. So I got the money, put it in the car, and drove to the agreed-upon meeting place. When I reached the location, a car was there waiting. I parked close to it and exited the car with the money bag in hand. The driver of the other car stepped out. It was Sam. "Sam? I thought you were working abroad," I said. "I was, but the work was too hard, so I quit and came back," Sam replied. "How can you kidnap and ransom your own nephew?" I asked. Sam laughed and said, "You misunderstand. I've just returned to take my share of the money." "What money are you talking about?" I asked. Sam sneered. "The money you took from me in running Dad's business." I tried to connect the dots. I said, "Sam, you were half owner of the business, but then you gave up your ownership to go work abroad. You haven't done anything to earn any money from the business." Sam kept sneering. "I want my share of the profits. Shut up, give me the money, and you'll get your son back." I gave him the money, he released John, and John ran into my arms crying. I asked John if Sam had hurt him, but he said no. After Sam took possession of the money, the police revealed themselves and moved in to surround us. Using a megaphone, they commanded him to surrender, but he ran into the woods instead. The policemen closed in and pursued him, but they lost him in the woods. He had escaped. I returned home with John, and my wife hugged him and cried tears of joy that he had been returned safe and unharmed. Mom asked me who did this. I hesitated. Should I tell her the truth? I decided to do so. She was horrified. A few days later, I received a letter. It was from Sam asking if I was ready for the next payment of my debt to him. I was dismayed and fearful at the same time. Sam had decided to be a villain against his own family, and I had decided to fight back against him tooth and nail. Decisions shape our lives.